Hey, so for my first field visit, I went to a second grade classroom, and we were told to look for things that might be helping kids with IEPs, but the classroom that I was in actually didn't have any children with IEPs. I found out that the elementary school that I was visiting at, they put all of the kids from each grade, so like all of the second graders with IEPs are in one classroom, and I was not in that classroom. The classroom that I was in actually had all of the students who were ESL learners, and they consider this inclusion because there were like 15 kids, right? 14, 15 kids in this classroom, and about 8 of them were ESL learners, and so the rest of them were not. So even though it's majority ESL, there are some kids in there who weren't, so it's still considered an inclusive environment. The same would be true for the classroom that's all IEP students. The majority of the classroom would have IEPs because all the kids from the IEPs would be in there, but then the classroom would still be filled in with kids who did not have IEPs to meet its max capacity for that room. So, since I didn't see anything directly relating to IEPs, I looked at other forms of technology that were in the room. The kids had Chromebooks instead of textbooks, which were like small, simplified laptops that they used for some of their coursework. But I personally found that for a lot of the kids, this seemed to actually make things harder rather than help them. One child in particular who had a more limited English proficiency, they were doing an activity on the Chromebooks where all of the students, there was also a smart board in the classroom, and the Chromebooks were connected to the smart board for some activities, including this one. And the teacher told all of the kids in English that they needed to log in on their Chromebooks, and then after a minute or so asked if everybody was logged in, and nobody answered that they weren't, and so she started the activity. Well, this one child with limited English proficiency, I guess, didn't understand what was going on. He didn't know how to log in, and he eventually came and asked me and the assistant teacher who was in the room if we could help him log in, which he didn't, use those words, but that's what he was trying to ask us. And, we asked the teacher, and she said, well, at this point he can't, because everybody has to be logged in before the assignment starts. The Chromebooks don't allow you to log in late. And so he was just left out of the entire assignment, and it was like 15, 20 minutes maybe of instruction time that he was just sitting there that he couldn't be involved in because he was not logged in before the assignment started. So that seems to be kind of a problem with using the technology instead of textbooks. Is that, if there are issues, you can't always fix them as easily as you could if it was like a textbook and you could just direct him to the right page or something. Although there were probably other ways that the teacher could have handled that situation so that it didn't happen. But yeah, so no IEPs on this visit, but there were the Chromebooks. There was a smart board. As far as smaller things that aren't necessarily like electronics, they had some multiplication manipulatives in the classroom, although they were still working on subtraction and addition, but I saw them there. They did have them in the classroom. They had charts on the walls. for math skills. And let's see. The other thing was their reading lessons are on the Chromebooks. So they log in there and they like read a small passage, and then there's like an understanding portion, and it's geared individually towards each child. So when they get a question wrong, it like sends them back a step, which I thought was interesting. It helps like keep them on a more individual level than if they all had to read the same thing and were all asked the same questions. So it's a little bit more self-paced, getting to do it that way, which seems like a good thing. But again, there were some children that were struggling just to use the device. And, we're already in spring semester, so these children have at least had these Chromebooks, since the fall. I believe the first grade classroom has them too, but at least they've had them since the fall, and they're still struggling to figure out how to use them. So it does seem like maybe it's a little bit difficult of a technology for them to use.